Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode of our podcast Off the Record. Thank you very much for all the feedback we have received since launching the podcast around 2 weeks ago. This makes us very happy and motivates us for the upcoming episodes, which we will be producing until the end of the year. Dashi, how are you?
I'm still very excited. The Question podcast, get out of your comfort zone, try something completely new, try yourself out again. Exciting guests, I'm even more excited, and I think that's also a very, very good transition because we have our first guest with us today, and I have the pleasure of introducing Thomas Frick, Country P&O Head Switzerland. Hello, Thomas. Great to have you with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Thomas, we want to talk to you about a very special topic, namely strengths. How would you define strengths?
A difficult question right away. I knew it was about strength, so I gave it a bit of thought. I went back and forth. I would have said that strengths are what I'm good at. And then I thought to myself, is that always the right thing? Then it depends again on what is actually required. If I have a strength one moment, it might be a weakness the next. But I would say it's something I'm good at, for which I receive praise and for which I'm also appreciated.
And how important is it to know your own strengths?
In my past experiences, I have taken tests of this nature and my abilities have consistently caught me off guard. I would always find myself needing to pause and reflect beforehand. Why are these my strengths? And then came to the conclusion that these are actually my strengths. I think you often feel that you have a strength, you get a reaction. And what's new now is that it's fun to do this. We had this strength workshop. It's a method for identifying your 7 best strengths. And what's completely new is that it's not something I'm simply good at, but something I enjoy doing, something that energizes me. In other words, there are also things that I can do well, but which drain my energy. I always mention filing the tax return. I'm very good at completing my tax return, no problem, but it robs me of an incredible amount of energy.
And my last nerve.
I find it worse when the bill arrives. I maintain that many people don't really know where their own strengths lie. Sometimes it might be a hunch or a gut feeling. I know my strengths, now what?
I know where I can contribute and where I can offer to do things because they are appreciated, because I feel good, because it gives me energy, because I enjoy it. But I also find it much more important to be able to recognize the strengths of others. Because how often do we work with someone we don't understand their reaction to something and potentially even hinder its progress? And if I know his strengths and perhaps also his points that he doesn't like to do, then an understanding of the other person develops. And if that understanding is there, then I think we work much better together.
At Siemens, we work with the Strength Scope tool. What makes this tool so special?
I think the tool makes it special for 2 reasons. One reason is to really understand that it's a strength. That realization hit me when I discovered this new tool. It's only considered a strength if it doesn't deplete my energy. I've tried various tools before, each with their pros and cons, but always yielding similar outcomes. And then I come to my second point. The second exciting thing is to discuss this. To discuss this with colleagues, to hear, do they experience you in the same way or do they see you completely differently? And sometimes it's exciting because they see you much more clearly than you see yourself. And to deal with it, to explain it, to understand it, I think that's the exciting thing about this strength tool. I can only recommend it to anyone and everyone. Do it, look at it, think about it, discuss it. Especially with others and in a team.
Yes, that was also my experience when I used the tool and tried it out. Of course, you think about it. What are your own strengths? You have a picture. Sometimes you overestimate yourself or can be completely wrong. And I also had an aha moment when I realized that there were strengths that I hadn't even realized were strengths. I can tell you about the team workshop we invited you to a few months ago. We had a conversation about it and then experienced this interaction, discussion, and exchange of ideas with coworkers, observing nuances that you may not even notice yourself. I wouldn't have thought that possible. After so many years of professional experience, you think, or so I thought, that I can place myself there quite well. But it was also very, very surprising for me at that point. I don't know, Ere, how you felt about it.
It was actually pretty similar for me. For me, a lot of the strengths that came out of the strength scope were my confirmation. But there were also one or two things that surprised me a little. I think it was also very important to realize that if something is not so pronounced in this report, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. As you say, Thomas, it's just something that perhaps isn't so. It's not the coolest thing. It's not what you like to do the most.
My biggest surprise was that I'm creative. If you had asked me, are you creative? I would have said no. Drawing, singing, not my thing, terrible. Upon reflection, I discovered an untapped well of creativity within me. It brings me immense joy to uncover fresh and ingenious solutions, challenging established norms, and thinking beyond convention. My mind incubates ideas, exploring their viability through rigorous testing. This newfound awareness has enlightened me to the scope of my creative abilities.
How do you incorporate your personal strengths into your day-to-day work, your team, or your private life?
That is actually a really good question. I believe that if there are tasks that I enjoy doing and feel that I can contribute something valuable, I would reach out and offer my support or assistance. I want to leverage my experience and knowledge to understand where my team members may have tasks that they do not enjoy doing and identify other team members who actually enjoy those tasks. Then, instead of forcing them to do something they dislike, we can redistribute the workload based on people's preferences and strengths. It is not about avoiding responsibilities, but rather about efficiently sharing them among the team members. So that in the end, I think it's easiest for everyone to do it and maybe even enjoy doing it.
What I found was that one strength is resilience. My colleagues were able to confirm this to a certain extent. Why do we attach so much importance to this at Siemens? Why is it important, even as a company? Not just about it. I don't want to talk about it now because it's an important topic, but also the opportunities we have.
I find it truly amazing how many strengths and good qualities we possess. By acknowledging and magnifying these qualities and by providing each other with support, I firmly believe that we can accomplish a tremendous amount. And when I think back to school, you were only ever told what you were bad at and what you couldn't do. The worst example for me is always French. I had, 7 years of French. I couldn't do anything. In the end, I was somehow able to hold on to a conditional D in writing. But I couldn't go to the bakery and order anything. Why? Because they always corrected me. Until I knew I couldn't do it, and then I didn't say anything. That would have been much better. They would have pointed out my strengths right from the start and said, hey, you're doing great and you can still do that. And to close the circle, I think we should focus on the strengths because we have a lot of them and can contribute them together.
You mentioned weaknesses. And it's true, we were born with them. We grew up with it at school, in our environment, to learn to talk about our weaknesses. And is it quite heretically window dressing that we no longer use this, but only ever talk about strengths?
No, being aware of your weaknesses is also a good thing. I have a duo of young employees on my team who display a slightly higher level of organization than me, consistently reminding me of my own lack thereof. I value their input, as they point out when I should and need to be more structured. This feedback is beneficial because they understand my limitations and offer support. In return, I may be able to offer support in a different area to reciprocate their assistance. It is important to be aware of our weaknesses and embrace them, recognizing that it is impossible to excel in all aspects. And that's not a negative thing, but then you don't have to focus on that, I think.
When discussing our weaknesses, we mentioned on our debut podcast that our guests should come with their preferred beverage. Tell us, which drink do you find irresistible?
You previously mentioned beer. Although I do consume it, it is not my preferred beverage. Recently, I've acquired a bottle of gin. And why did I decide to obtain the gin? It's because it was brewed in close proximity to where I am. Our colleagues joined us for a business purpose, accompanying us throughout the endeavor. I think 5 of us brewed this gin together, and then you get the basic substance for the gin and you mix it together with different flavors until you like it. And then at the end, you get a whole bottle of it. And I like the gin. And that's my gin. I still find that exciting. You can also show it to people and say, try it. Some people like it, others don't. And that's how it should be. It's like with the strengths. Everyone has their own combination of strengths. Everyone is good for themselves. And one person doesn't like another.
The mix is what matters.
So you don't have to like it, but it's the gin that we made. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.
Which botanicals have you mixed in there now?
I'm more on the fruity side. I have mixed a lot of berries into the gin. Different berries. Blueberries are in the gin. Raspberries are in it. Strawberries too, I think. But I don't know what else is in this gin.
So it's actually a healthy gin?
Yes, very healthy.
All fruit.
And organic, of course. Does the gin have a name? Thomas Frick Gin?
No, just my gin. Let's call it my gin.
Super.
But you'll get the code and you can reorder it if you want. But it's not so good that I'm going to reorder it now. But it's mine.
You definitely wouldn't call distilling a gin a strength then?
Gin, no, it's fun, but I have to say without envy that others do it better than me.
Thomas, please tell us, what is your super strength or superpower?
My superpower? I would probably say I'm very pragmatic. Yes, that's it. I think I can approach things very well and very pragmatically. I sometimes see that as a strength. It can also be really helpful or inspiring for others. But sometimes I've been accused of being too pragmatic. I've heard superiors say, "Boy, you should be less pragmatic." Yes, that's me and I like doing it. Sometimes it just doesn't fit, and that's a good example of how it's not a bad thing. Maybe I'm just in the wrong place then. I don't want to say that I was in the wrong place, but I think you have to be aware of that. If you're not so good at something or can do something that's not so appreciated, then maybe you're not in the right place then and that you have to bring it in somewhere else. But I can work on myself. But I have my own characteristics, I think, and I should be aware of that. That's important.
The strengths profile is presented to you as advice, and the individual strengths have different lengths. How do you deal with it if you don't really have very clear strengths, but everything is actually in the middle range? How can you improve that?
Do you have to improve that? Is there a wrong profile? I don't think there is a wrong profile. I think you have to be aware of what it is. And you have your 7 strongest qualities, I would say. And I don't think that if you have the need and the desire to develop somewhere, then please, you should develop. You should certainly always try to grow everywhere, not simply suppress it. But I don't think there is a wrong profile, but rather look at how I can best use the profile. Being aware of what I'm doing now may need energy. That doesn't mean to not doing it more. But perhaps being aware that, yes, if I do this, I need the energy. When I do my tax return, for example, then yes, I need to do it now. I take the time because I have to. And then I accept that and I do it. And then it's easy for me. I don't put it off for days on end. I make myself an appointment and then I do it. And yes, this too, that doesn't mean you only do what you're really good at, but be aware that this takes away more of your energy. Or maybe you can even get more support in one place.
Is there a strength that you don't have according to the strengths profile that you would like to have?
Yes, maybe being a bit more structured sometimes. Yes, well, I do make an effort. And then I have to have it in order and file it away but that takes energy. Sometimes I think a bit more. But as I said, I have people around me who also know that and they take over and compliment me. And from that point of view, there are always things you want to be better at, but you also have to accept what you're not good at. And you can make an effort to do that a little better.
In the next episode, we will talk to Jörn about error culture. How can strengths help in dealing with mistakes?
You have to have the strength to accept mistakes. And sometimes I know how difficult it is. It's also so difficult because we have a different culture. I've experienced the same thing. Then something happened and I went and asked back. And then people immediately go into defense mode. And I just wanted to understand why that was the case. It wasn't an accusation. I wanted to see, is it the process or can we improve something, do something different? And I'm also aware that I make mistakes every day. And not making mistakes is not an option, and it would take far too much energy. And maybe you also need to have the strength to be more generous sometimes, to tolerate mistakes too. And ultimately, every development only comes from mistakes. And if I don't make mistakes, I can't develop. So all I can really say is to accept the strength of mistakes and deal with them positively.
Those are very strong words. Unfortunately, we're almost at the end. Is there anything else you would like to share with us all? A nice closing word?
I felt at ease. Thank you very much. That's your strength now that you've shown me that not everything was planned either. I knew the topic. The questions just came up. I thought that was nice. I think you created a pleasant atmosphere. I think that was also very pleasant and exciting for me. Thank you from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think we'll drink to that again.
Yes, thank you, Thomas, for joining us. We're already looking forward to the next episode in 2 weeks' time, where we'll be talking to Jörn Harder about the topic of error culture, as previously announced. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you very much. Bye together.